Amy never expected this day to come. The day when a familiar shadow stepped back onto the Heartland Ranch, forcing her heart to stop as one impossible name echoed in her mind. Ty. Amy's morning at Heartland began like any other, quiet, calm, and wrapped in the soft gold of an Alberta sunrise. She walked across the yard, her boots brushing through the cool grass as the horses stirred awake in their paddocks. The air was calm enough to make her forget the weight she carried deep inside, the memories that never faded no matter how many years had passed. But that peaceful moment broke in an instant when she felt the strange sensation of being watched. She stopped walking. Her breath caught. Someone was standing at the edge of the ranch. At first she thought it was just a ranch hand or a passing neighbor, but the stillness around her told her this was different. The horses stopped moving. The wind fell quiet. Even the birds hushed, as if the world paused to witness something impossible. Amy slowly turned her head, and her eyes widened with a mix of shock and fear. A figure stood far across the yard. The sun behind him made it hard to see his face, but she could make out the familiar shape of his stance, the way he held his shoulders, the way he stood rooted in the earth like he had been gone for a lifetime and somehow found his way back home. Amy's heart thudded against her ribs. It couldn't be. It shouldn't be. But every part of her recognized that silhouette. Memories rushed back in a flood. Ty laughing in the barn, Ty working with wild horses, Ty holding her hand under the stars. Little moments she thought she had accepted were gone forever. Yet here, right now, all those memories came alive again as her breath grew unsteady. She blinked hard, trying to force the image to make sense. Was her mind playing tricks? Was it just someone who looked like him from far away? Or was Heartland about to witness a miracle no one could explain? She took a slow step forward, then froze again, her eyes locked on the figure. The man didn't move, didn't wave, didn't speak. He simply stood there, letting Amy's emotions crash around her like a storm she never prepared for. There was something haunting about the way his presence filled the ranch, something that felt both comforting and terrifying. Amy swallowed hard, trying to find her voice, but her throat tightened. The possibility, no matter how impossible, shook her to the core. She whispered one name under her breath, a name she hadn't spoken like this in years. Ty. And for a moment, it felt like the whole world leaned in to listen. Her thoughts raced. If this was real, everything she believed about her future, her healing, her journey without him would change in a single heartbeat. But if it wasn't real, then she was about to face a truth she might not be ready for. Her hands trembled as the shadow finally took a single, slow step forward. Amy didn't move. She couldn't. Her eyes stayed glued to the figure as the light shifted just enough for her to see the outline of a jacket she once knew. The familiar way he carried his weight, the quiet strength he always had even before he spoke. The world around her faded into silence. Amy's heart raced with both hope and fear as one question screamed inside her. Could Ty really have returned, or was this the start of something even more mysterious? Amy's mind spun as she stood frozen in place, her eyes locked on the distant figure. Every breath felt heavy, like her body wasn't sure if it should run, collapse, or rush forward to confirm the impossible. She had spent years telling herself she was strong enough to move forward, strong enough to live with the heartbreak that never fully healed. But now, as that familiar silhouette stood on the far side of the ranch, all that strength seemed to tremble inside her. She tried to remind herself of reality, of how life had changed, of how she had learned to guide her daughter through the memories of the father she lost. But emotion pushed back harder than reason. Her heart whispered one thing. Her mind screamed another. And the quiet wind around her seemed to carry both voices like a storm building in the distance. For a moment, Amy closed her eyes, trying to steady her thoughts. She told herself to breathe, to calm down, to look at the situation clearly. But nothing about this felt simple. The ranch felt different today, charged with an energy she couldn't explain. Even the horses sensed it. Spartan lifted his head sharply, ears pricked toward the figure. The young foal in the next pen nudged its mother like something unfamiliar had entered their world. Amy felt it too, that deep connection Heartland always had with the people who loved it. Sometimes the ranch revealed truths before anyone else could understand them. But Amy wasn't sure if this truth was one she was ready to face. Her mind raced through memories, not the easy ones, but the ones that cut deeply. The moment she got the news, the silence that followed, the long nights wondering how she would ever breathe normally again. She thought about the promises she and Ty made, promises carved into their hearts even when life pulled them in painful directions. She remembered the way he encouraged her, how he always believed in her strength even when she doubted it. Ty had been more than a partner. He had been her anchor. And now, the idea that he could be standing just yards away struck her with a force she couldn't understand. But another thought slithered into her mind, cold and sharp. What if this wasn't Ty at all? What if the universe was playing a cruel trick on her heart? What if someone knew his story and used it for reasons she couldn't imagine? Heartland had seen moments of darkness before, people with secrets, strangers with hidden motives. Amy knew better than anyone that not every arrival at the ranch brought comfort. Some brought confusion. Some brought danger. Some brought truths no one was prepared for. And the uncertainty of this moment made her chest tighten even more. The figure still hadn't moved again. His stillness was part of the mystery, part of the fear, part of the hope that kept rising inside Amy despite everything she learned about guarding her heart. Her stomach twisted with questions she couldn't control. Why now, after all these years? After she finally started to rebuild? Was this fate stepping back into her life, or was it a memory taking shape in the real world? She wished she could dismiss it, shrug it off as a stranger passing through. But nothing inside her allowed that explanation. She knew the way Ty stood. She knew the softness in his shoulders. She knew the calm strength in his posture. And this man, this silhouette carried all of that, exactly how she remembered it. Amy took one unsteady step forward. Her boots crunched softly against the dirt, and for the first time, the figure shifted. It was subtle, barely more than a tilt of the head, but it made her breath break again. Her hands shook as she tried to focus, her mind desperately searching for logic that didn't exist. She thought of Lyndy. She thought of how she would explain this moment if it turned out to be real. She thought of how she would protect her daughter if it wasn't. Every path was filled with a different kind of fear. A different kind of hope. The ranch around her seemed to tighten, as if drawing her toward the truth she hadn't yet accepted. Amy placed a hand on her chest, feeling her heart race, feeling old wounds open and new questions rise. The conflict inside her was fierce hope pulling one way, doubt pulling the other. And standing between those emotions was the one thing she wanted more than anything, yet feared most of all. What if Ty truly had returned? And what if Heartland's greatest secret was about to be revealed? Amy's world narrowed to a single point in front of her, the quiet, steady shape of the man who stood at the edge of Heartland. Her heartbeat grew loud in her ears, thudding with a rhythm that didn't feel like fear anymore. It felt like recognition, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. She wondered if it was possible for the heart to remember someone long after the mind had stopped believing. Because every part of her body reacted as if this moment had happened before, as if she'd lived the same shock in a dream she could never quite wake from. The air around her seemed to thicken, stretching seconds into moments and moments into something much heavier. Her world was shrinking until all that existed was her, the ranch. And the man she couldn't look away from. The figure took another slow step forward, and this time, Amy heard it. Not loud, just a soft thud of a boot against the dirt. A sound she knew better than she wished she did. The same way Ty walked when he returned from long days on the rodeo circuit. The same gentle step he had when he didn't want to wake Lyndy from her naps. That sound alone sent a tremor through Amy's chest. A part of her wanted to run to him, forget every painful memory, and believe that miracles sometimes returned the things life had taken away. Another part held her back, gripping her heart tightly, reminding her that shadows could look familiar. And hope could be cruel. As the man stepped closer, Amy noticed small details the light had hidden before. The shape of his jacket worn at the edges like it had stories to tell. his hands resting at his sides in a calm, steady way that felt so much like the man she had once loved beyond words. His height, his posture, the way he seemed grounded and gentle all at once. These pieces pulled her deeper into the moment, making it harder to breathe, harder to think. She felt tears sting her eyes, not from sadness, but from the weight of something she couldn't yet understand. Her mind replayed the last time she ever saw Ty, how life had changed in a single heartbeat, how she had tried to rebuild a world without him while still honoring the love they shared. She remembered nights where she looked at the stars, wondering if he was somehow watching over them. She remembered mornings when she pretended she didn't feel the empty space beside her. She remembered the ache that never left. Yet here she stood watching a shape, a shadow, a possibility that threatened to break open everything she had carefully held together. The man paused a few steps away, close enough that Amy could see the faint outline of movement in his shoulders as he breathed. But still, he didn't speak. He didn't wave. He didn't reveal himself. It was as if he knew the power of this moment, as if he understood that a single word might shatter Amy's world in ways she couldn't recover from. Amy felt her hands tremble again. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of everything she had lost, everything she hoped for, everything she still feared. It was the kind of silence that demanded truth. Her mind searched for explanations. Could this be a dream? A memory? A cruel impersonation? Or was this the moment where the past stepped forward and rewrote itself? She thought of Jack, of how he would react to this. She thought of Lou, of the entire Heartland family, of how deeply Ty had touched each of their lives. Would they believe her if she said he might be alive? Would she even believe herself? The confusion burned through her, mixing with wonder, leaving her suspended in emotional chaos. Then it happened. The small, simple detail that changed everything. The figure reached up and gently placed a hand over his heart. Amy's breath collapsed. Her knees almost buckled, because that gesture, quiet, emotional, full of meaning, was something Ty had always done when words were too hard to say. He did it when he made promises. He did it when he comforted her during their hardest fights. He did it the day he told her she was the only woman he ever wanted to spend his life with. It wasn't just a gesture. It was his gesture. A piece of him that no one else could ever copy. Amy's eyes filled with tears she tried desperately to hold back. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, pushing past the cold fear, past the logical doubts, past the years of grief. The world around her blurred as her heart answered the question her mind was still too scared to face. Her voice broke into a whisper when she could barely hear herself. "Ty, is it really you?" The wind shifted, brushing against her face like a soft, familiar touch. The clouds parted just enough to let more light fall on the man's silhouette. And though his face was still hidden, though no clear answer came, the weight of the moment told her one thing with terrifying clarity. This was no coincidence. This was the moment her life was about to change forever. The air around Amy felt heavy, charged with a strange mix of hope and fear as she stared at the man who stood only a few steps away. Every part of her begged for the truth, but the silence between them stretched on, thick enough to press against her skin. The man still didn't speak, still didn't reveal his face. He simply stood there with that quiet strength, that familiar stillness that sent shockwaves through her heart. Amy wanted to move, to say something, to force this moment into clarity, yet her legs felt locked in place, as if the earth itself was holding her still until she was ready for whatever truth was coming. The world around her seemed frozen. Even Spartan remained perfectly quiet, watching with wide, alert eyes as if he, too, recognized the energy of the scene unfolding. For a moment, Amy wondered if this was a dream she had slipped into, one of the many late-night moments when her mind wandered to what life might look like if Ty had never left. But dreams never felt this sharp. They never felt this real. They never felt this heavy with meaning. This was different. This was alive. As she stood there, trying to steady her breathing, the man finally moved again, but instead of stepping forward, he slowly lowered his hand from his chest and let it fall softly to his side. The gesture was small, almost effortless, Yet it sent a deep ache through Amy's chest, the kind that awakened every memory and every question she had tried to bury. She took another hesitant step closer, her heart beating hard enough to shake her rib cage. She wanted to see his eyes. She wanted to hear his voice. She wanted the world to confirm what her heart whispered over and over. The ranch was quiet, holding its breath for her. And then she heard it, the tiniest sound in the world, but one that felt like thunder to her ears. A soft inhale, a quiet exhale. The man was breathing in that calm, steady rhythm she knew better than she knew herself. Amy's fingers curled as emotion swirled inside her like a storm she couldn't tame. But then, almost as if sensing her need for answers, the man turned slightly, not fully, just enough to shift the angle of his silhouette, and the light caught him in a way that revealed something Amy hadn't seen before. On his wrist, just under the edge of his jacket, glinted a bracelet. Simple, worn, with a thin leather band and a faded bead at the end. The bracelet Ty had made during one of their early summers together. The bracelet she had given him when he promised to never leave her side, no matter what life threw at them. A bracelet she believed was gone forever. The sight of it stole the breath from her lungs. The world seemed to tilt, as if the ground under her feet shifted with the force of the truth. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling before she could stop them. She didn't try to wipe them away. She didn't try to hide how deeply this moment hit her. Because for the first time since the figure appeared, the fear inside her started to fade. And something warmer, deeper, and far more dangerous took its place. Belief. Still, the man said nothing. And Amy, despite the emotion flooding her, felt a tiny pinch of doubt cling to her mind. Why wouldn't he speak? Why wouldn't he say her name, the one word she needed more than anything? Was he afraid? Was he testing her? Or was something even bigger happening, something that went beyond her understanding? She could feel the tension twisting around her heart, wrapping tighter with each passing second. The wind picked up, pushing strands of her hair across her face as she stepped closer, yet she still couldn't see his eyes. She strained to hear something, his breath, a whisper. Anything, but the world seemed to hold everything back. As if guarding the truth until the right moment, the ranch door behind her creaked softly in the wind, the old wood echoing through the quiet yard. It was the kind of sound Ty would always turn toward, checking to see if someone needed help or if Lyndy was nearby. The man did exactly that. He turned slightly, tilting his head toward the sound in the same instinctive way Ty always had. The gesture was so natural, so deeply part of who he had been, that Amy's breath broke into a soft, shaking sob. She covered her mouth for a moment, overwhelmed. The world blurred through her tears, yet the figure in front of her became clearer than ever. She felt her heart splitting open with equal parts hope and terror. Finally, she found her voice again, fragile, trembling, but steady enough to cross the space between them. "If you're really Ty," she whispered, "please, say something." Her voice cracked, the emotion heavy. "Please." The wind carried her words forward, letting them hang in the air between them like a fragile bridge, connecting two very different worlds, the life she built after loss and the life she once dreamed of before everything changed. The man remained still for a long, painful moment. Amy felt the seconds stretch on until she thought she might break under the weight of not knowing. And then he moved. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted his head just enough for the shadow of his chin to rise toward the light. Amy stiffened. Her heart pounded so loudly that she could barely hear anything else. But just as the sun began to reach the edge of his face, the screen of her world seemed to fade, as if the universe itself was cutting to black before revealing the truth. Amy's eyes widened. Her breath stopped. The moment froze, and that is where episode 9 leaves them caught between truth and mystery, hope and heartbreak, past and future. Because one thing is certain, Heartland will never be the same after this. Ty's return, whether real, symbolic, or something far more unexpected, will uncover secrets, shake old wounds, and change Amy's life in ways she never imagined. And now the question falls on you, the viewer. Do you believe Ty has truly returned? Or is Heartland hiding a deeper truth waiting to be revealed?